This entire Mark Williams situation is kind of crazy. And I actually personally feel really bad for Mark Williams himself being in the middle of all of this and having all this being publicized and, a team not wanting you. And that label can stick for a long time, right? And you have to wonder what made the Lakers decide to walk away from the table when it came to this deal. So if you guys don't know what happened, the Lakers at the deadline were able to come to an agreement to trade Dalton Knecht, I believe a first, a swap, and just whatever, all that stuff for Mark Williams. And everything was great, but the trade falls through. Apparently, the Hornets decide to dispute the failed physical, which is why the Lakers decided to walk away. And now we have Adam Silver today saying there was no actual formal dispute filed. That's really weird considering I don't know what's happening here. I'd assume Shams was the first person to report this. But regardless, he oftentimes, since he's Shams, gets all the shine. So I don't know who the actual first person is if it isn't him, but that doesn't matter. He reported that the Charlotte Hornets have been in contact with the NBA as they explore options to dispute the Los Angeles Lakers' failed physical assessment of Mark Williams, sources tell ESPN. The Williams-Dalton Knecht trade was nixed on Saturday, and now Hornets weigh avenues to challenge. Actually, you know what? I'll say this. Upon reading it back, he doesn't actually directly say in this specific tweet that they will be filing something. They're just exploring options. Now, maybe he followed up with this. I know that he did a number of TV appearances, but it appeared like there was a lot of conflicting informations on both sides. I mean, the Hornets were the ones that were said to have approached the Lakers to make the deal. Then when this is all publicized that it was nixed, they backtracked, put out a public statement saying, basically after the other team pursued him, we love him so much, but we had no choice but to take that amazing offer they were giving, basically to summarize. But it's been weird with that. And then a couple of days ago, we had Dave McMenamin on ESPN literally reporting that this is going to be some sort of mock trial, right? Like a mock trial. That's hilarious, right? Where both sides will present a case and the NBA will determine who's right, who's wrong type deal. That's kind of crazy. And to have Adam Silver come out and say, we're going to watch that in a minute, but basically say that's not really a thing, you got to wonder what was happening here, right? Like I said, it feels pretty crappy for Mark Williams being in the middle of all of this. But what do you guys think happened here? Because it's not just Shams, it's not just Dave. It was everybody. Everybody was saying they're going to file a grievance with the league, et cetera. And if you guys don't really understand exactly what happened, the trade went through. The Lakers and Hornets called, they sent over the medical evaluation that the Hornets did to the Lakers on Mark Williams. They were like, okay, yeah, this is awesome. We like what we see here. And the Lakers were even saying things like, we're confident we'll get him in our system and he'll be okay for a long time to come. The Lakers were very confident in Mark Williams' health. Otherwise, they wouldn't have pulled the trade. That was probably a bit of an overpay, right? Depending on who you ask. I believe it was. Regardless, but when they got Mark Williams and did their own evaluation, they were like, wait a minute. It hasn't actually been publicized what exactly it was. There was some people saying it's not the back, it's the foot. Like there's just a lot of just conflicting information with Mark. Basically the Lakers walked away at the last minute. Unfortunately, it was post deadline at that point. So you can't say, okay, well, we didn't like what we saw. Give us back that pick. Let's put protections. Let's do this or that. Instead of Dalton, maybe take, I don't know if the salaries match, but whatever, just hypothetically, Christian Wood instead. Like they can't do all that anymore. At that point, your options are take it or leave it. And so, unfortunately, the Lakers actually had to just leave it, which is interesting because I saw a lot of people recently, the sentiment was starting to grow that maybe it's not the worst idea if the NBA overturns this so the Lakers can still get Mark Williams for the short term. Interesting idea for sure. But yeah, let's see what he has to say here. By the way, it's a little bit quiet. I can't adjust the volume. I don't have any controls on that. It's on max volume. So please check it out, and I'll be quiet throughout this.
The answer to your first question is no. Charlotte has not filed a protest of any kind. I think the larger issue, reflecting your question in this day and age of sports science, is there a different standard of sort we should be applying in terms of players passing physicals in trades, and it's something we should look at as a league. I will say this issue does not come up that often. I can't even remember, and certainly I don't think in my tenure a trade there's ever been a challenge because a player has failed a physical. But almost by definition, you get into a certain level of subjectivity, and where that standard is. But I think let's see what Charlotte decides to do here. But I think either way, it's gotten our attention. We understand that in the back and forth of teams and trades, that to the extent we can reduce uncertainty, that's a positive thing. And obviously, I mentioned before that for players who are involved in trades, how disruptive it can be. I'm sure it's equally as disruptive to think you had been traded than not to be just not to have been traded. Disruptive for the player, disruptive for their teammates. So, we'll look at it. I mean, I'd say that's one of those areas when it comes to, the health and well-being of our players, medical science, that there have been incredible developments, and this is a rule sort of as interpreted now, hasn't changed for many decades at the league office.
Yeah, so I talked about it from Mark's perspective, mainly because he's the main one where it's like he's injured, this and that, but also kind of got a feel for both of the guys involved. Like, imagine being traded and then being told to report back to your previous team because things fell through. Like, psychologically, that would feel kind of crappy for me, I'm sure, if that were me, right? But I mean, at the end of the day, these guys are paid a great amount of money. They should be fine. So hopefully things do work out for them mentally on that front. But he basically said at the very beginning of this that there was nothing. Let's just rewind that.
The answer to your first question is no. Charlotte has not filed a protest of any kind.
So again, operative word there is filed, which I do think is in line with the Shams thing I was pointing out earlier, where he's saying they're just kind of looking at their options. It's just kind of weird how this thing kind of took a life of its own, where, like I said, the whole mock trial thing came out. Like, where the hell was Dave McGoodman even getting that from? Like, what is he doing? Like, I don't understand. Like, what is that? Just a conceptual thing? Like, maybe if this got far enough, I'm not really sure. But he does pose a different question where he says, do we need to evaluate the way that these things are done in trades? And maybe that's something to look at. But he said, this doesn't happen very often. So when a team is willing to walk away from the table, if you're the Lakers, when a team's willing to walk away, that's a big red flag. And then also another bigger red flag, in my opinion, is to have the opposite team, like, regardless of them saying, oh, yeah, we love him, we want him back, blah, blah, blah. But to have them, like, actually say, no, let's flip this. To me, it can be one of two things in that case. They really love Dalton, which they did. That was something that was reported way back at the draft. But they really, really love Dalton, or they know something else is going on there and they're trying to offload him, which is weird. He's an up-and-coming center. Yeah, he has his issues, but he profiles to be, if he's healthy, a really, really good center for a really, really long time, and he's not the type of guy that you trade off. So it's just a weird situation to be in on every front involved with this. But let me know in the comments down below what you guys think about it. But I don't know if this is the last we're going to hear of this, because apparently they didn't actually file anything. He said later on that we'll have to see what Charlotte decides to do, which tells me this is not completely 100% gone in a way, but it's definitely really, really interesting.